Now we come into our winner for Best Documentary Feature. And what better company that can release documentary films than Netflix? And it's interesting that this is their second win in this category, the first one being Icarus in 2017. And I did mention one of their other films that was nominated, The Edge of Democracy, but this film has to do with our American workers' relationship with Chinese workers. And it's also one of the first films to be involved with former US President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle's film company, Higher Ground Productions, which ended up becoming our winning film for the Directors Guild, the Independent Spirit Awards, and the Oscar with American Factory. Directed by Steve Bogner and Julie Reichert, this actually is a follow-up to their 2009 Oscar-nominated documentary short, The Last Truck, Closing of a GM Plant, where the building had the plant in Dayton, Ohio, was bought by the chairman and founder of the Fuyao glass industry, Chang Di-wong, to have an American Fuyao factory there, which managed to save a lot of people who lost their jobs from the GM plant and now working again for Fuyao. As we get the perspectives of the CEO, as well as many of the American workers and Chinese workers who immigrated to the United States to instruct the Americans on what to do. However, months later, it does not go well for some of the American workers on how their management is formed with their minimal pay and work time to their relationships with some of the Chinese workers. So some of them started a labor union protest to make sure Fuyao CEO and the heads of the American factory to see if they can have a union contract between the companies in the United States and China. Now I know that some of you who are watching this are not going to give a crap about this, especially since our country and China have massive ups and downs with our relationships. By the way, we're not going into the virus thing in this video, as this movie was filmed between around February 2015 to the end of 2017, so just leave it be. Now obviously, the big message of the film is the union of all workers, which I can agree on that every worker needs to be equal in one way or the other, and it makes this a very good political movie, as not also you feel for those labor workers, but also for those other workers who are in the head sides, even the heads of the Fuyao Ohio company and the CEO himself. At the beginning, they all seemed good friends, especially as some of the American and Chinese workers had some great moments off work, and the massive progress on those American workers who had poor money to manage to be advanced on being rich, until the union came along. As for the Chinese workers, you can see a lot of them at a very young age, and when some of the head American workers go to the Fuyao factory in China, you see how difficult it is for the workers in China. This is why how the workers were strict to some Americans on what and what not to do. This could be why Americans out there might not like this movie, or you find it okay like me. If I do have criticisms here, it feels like we have too many people to follow here. Also, it's a bit long with almost a 2-hour length. And also, even though the Chinese New Year party we saw was fun to watch, but it's filler for the movie. So yeah, the movie has a slow pace. I would say that American Factory is definitely a movie for those who are in the workforce, since it does have a great message on labor union and relations with other workers. However, if you're not a person into a political movie, I say skip this one. Or maybe add to your watch list on your Netflix account if you're still curious to see this one. Now we come into our ranking on the documentaries on what was my least favorite to the best one of the 5 nominees. Number 5, The Edge of Democracy. As the other Netflix film made me very confused, not much great information on the Brazilian government, and not much evidence on the investigation of the 2 previous presidents. Number 4, For Sama. Although it's a great idea to have a video diary to one of Watt's daughters, but not much on the hospital and where they reside, and Sama herself. Number 3, American Factory. Yep, the winner is here in the middle. As much as it has a good message on a labor union and some great relationships with the workers, but it's a very slow-paced film with too many people we follow throughout the journey. Number 2, The Cave. Despite not enough origins of the underground hospital itself, but Dr. Amani is definitely a hero on what her job is to do to save children. And my number 1 documentary feature is Honeyland, a great story about this village beekeeper on her ups and downs, and great personalities of all the people as you feel for all of them. So yeah, the North Macedonia film should have won this category. Don't get me wrong, I can see why American Factory won, but I feel like two of them were better. Now, if other people were voting for the nominations, what would others vote for? Well, I would have Honeyland and the Cave in here without a doubt, but for the others, definitely not The Edge of Democracy and For Sama, but for American Factory, I don't know. Now, there are many other options that could got in here, like One Child Nation, Midnight Family, The Great Hack, Maiden, and the big snub of this past Oscars in the documentary category, Apollo 11. And after seeing Apollo 11, I honestly wouldn't have it in my lineup. Although it was awesome to see it never before seen footages of the mission, especially in color, but just watching the mission is not that entertaining as a movie. So I do consider Apollo 11 overrated. Heck, if you want an Apollo 11 movie that's a good watch, it's called First Man. And it's so weird that not only in my nomination prediction video that I was predicting it for documentary feature, but even predicting it for film editing, which of course did not happen. But we know we need another documentary feature to get nominated in that category. And that's the end of our Oscars documentary reviews of the year. If you have not yet, you can click that subscribe button and comment down below on your ranking if you have seen all the 5 nominees. Also, do you agree or disagree that American Factory deserved it or not? And speaking of Honeyland, since it was my number 1 on the documentary feature category, what about the international feature category? Well, on Friday, we'll find out the results, as we'll end the reviews with our winner for Best International Feature, as well as Best Original Screenplay, Best Director, and Best Picture of 2019.